Alrighty, welcome to Worldwide Slot Car Chat on Zoom, number 200 and whatever. Don't care anymore. The gang's all here, mostly. I'm your host, Greg Gaub. We got Don and Luff and Lenny and Jim and John and Mike and Garth and Wayne and Courtney and other people. Let us converse about cars that ride in slots on tracks, starting with show and tell. I have a show and tell. I completely forgot about it, but it came the other day and I'm like, oh, cool. Now I have a show and tell. Somebody here knows what I'm talking about. Does anybody else have a show and tell? All right, Mr. Young, go ahead. You're still muted.
I got a new car also. One that
Oh, the GT.
I've admired for a while. So I finally decided to go ahead and get it.
Nice.
And, I know a lot of people say a lot of bad things about Carrera cars, but they sure are pretty.
That's definitely not something people say is bad looking Carrera cars.
No,
So,
it's a gorgeous car, and it's actually fairly light for a Carrera too.
Is that the Ferrari?
Yeah, it's Ferrari
Yes.
296.
I'm terrible with cars. Thought it was the Ford GT at first. Yeah. Pretty cool.
but that's it.
Alrighty then. Luff put his hand up. Go ahead, Mr. Linkert.
No, I finished my baby.
Oh,
Nice.
Nice.
Now, Luff, that isn't you behind the wheel, though.
Of course it is.
It's Linda Vaughn.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it looks like Linda Vaughn. Okay, cool. So, well, it's nice to know that you put in some retro airbags. That's very cool.
It's
Show us the
an
chassis.
old Cox chassis.
There you go.
Do you have the vented seats too?
Does that have has that got the drop arm or the fulcrum?
Yeah. I think it's the old Cheetah chassis. Anyway, it's gonna be racing for the first time tomorrow night.
Nice.
it races?
Well,
Everything.
the way he races, and you can put anything on the track.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could put a grandma in a wheelchair on the track and race in his races.
Yeah.
And he can win.
And
They have the racing ready.
yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Yeah.
All right, good looking car, Luff. Thanks for sharing. All righty, I guess it's my turn. Share. Change windows. There we go. Lenny knows this one. He sent it to me. Mr. Allen, thank you very much. And I completely forgot about it. But it, of course, is Greg themed. So I figured I would share it. And pictures go this way. There we go. There's the tail end. And for all you slot car buffs out there, we got the chassis picture. 3D printed chassis with a slotted pod. I didn't take it apart. This thing is locked down tight, and I imagine that's because those wheels are an angel hair's breadth away from the body to be rubbing on the body. They don't rub, but looking at it, you'd think they would. So I'm not about to unscrew any of these screws. But it races.
Sorry, Greg, is that a vac body?
It's a vac form body. Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, looks fantastic, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it really is nice.
That's meant to represent a Holden Commodore, ZB Commodore, the last of the Commodores, which was actually an Opel insignia. But by the time our blokes finished with it, had a 5-litre V8 in the front, driving the back wheels, not driving the front wheels.
Yeah, I got a couple Scalextric Aussie V8s, but nothing like this for sure. So
Yeah,
we go ahead.
Because they're not making the V8s anymore, Scalextric, and they're getting a bit hard to come by, and of course the collectors are forcing the price up.
Yep.
So we decided to come up with a bargain base, or not a bargain base, but a budget type car. So that's a locally made body. The wheels are locally made.
And
The chassis is locally made, but
the wing is 3D printed, or the uprights are 3D printed. The whole
yes,
thing?
yes.
Okay, yeah.
Are they glued into place?
Platform rear wing with the end plates of 3D printed. Yeah.
Yeah.
A guy called Ian makes them. Outer Limits. But he changed the name. It's Outer Limits Products. He's broken into 3D printed train parts as well. But the 3D printed chassis done by one of our members' mates who doesn't do slot cars, but he just likes to do 3D printing. So, we decided to go for the slotted pod.
Oh, you've got some infill there.
Yeah.
It's probably
that's a pre-production chassis. That one.
Okay.
That's not a full production one yet. So
being 100% Aussie, that picture, Greg, is its natural position, is it not?
position, yeah, or correct orientation. In my hemisphere, that is its natural orientation.
I'll just remind you, chaps, that there's no top in a sphere.
That's true. And
Unless you're a flat earther, of course.
love it. Torque screws all around.
Yeah. Oh, I've just find them a lot easier to use.
They are. Yeah. And what what kind of wheels do you have on the front? They're fantastic.
Oh, they're MJK brand wheels and tires.
What kind?
MJK.
MJK. Okay.
Yeah. They're made in Adelaide.
Yeah, I assumed the backs were MJK, but I didn't think the fronts would be. But you coated the fronts, or does he make a really high shore?
Yeah, they make a high shore one. I think they've been coated.
Yeah.
That car's actually come from young Andrew, who races with us.
Oh, tell him thanks.
Yeah. No, I paid him for it, but.
Good job putting it together.
It was he just paid for the parts, but that was all.
Yeah, and
So,
feel free to
I hope
message
you enjoy
me
it.
about such things if you so desire. I'm happy to contribute as needed.
No, that's a gift to you for running this show.
Which I appreciate, but I'm not. That's not what I'm about. So.
Yeah. No, that's just a way of saying thank you to you for running the chat.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you.
No worries.
All right. Any other show and tells out there? John, what you got?
Well, it's probably not unique because it was part of the Memorial Day sale at Electric Dreams. They had a couple of nice cars, and I don't.
Marshall car. Oh yeah, there you go.
That was that was certainly one of my favorites in observing the Can-Am and back in the day, and one of my favorites of all time also. The Cheetah.
MRRC. Good looking car.
Yeah, I have no idea how they run because I haven't tried them yet.
Don't.
It's a good looking car.
Good looking car.
All right, we'll do that. I'm finding it now that I'm back to the hobby. I can't get over how easy it is to procure new cars.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be pretty rare for the price to go up, generally speaking, and desirable, of course. I guess that's true for any hobby. But yeah, I would say, generally speaking, most slot cars are fairly well priced on the aftermarket.
Yeah. So that was my show and tell.
Yeah, that's why, John, I left all of the price tags on mine for my wife, and I told her, if you get 50 cents on the dollar when I'm gone, you're doing real well.
For sure. All right, before I change the topic, any other show and tells? Wayne, you got something?
Yeah, a very, very brief one.
Sure.
Just for you guys. This.
Oh, a Uniprint.
Yeah. It's been printed on behalf of 201 Slot Cars in association with myself. It's a chassis kit. And
Over so we can see the bottom. There you go. There you go.
It looks like a slot car that's been compressed.
yeah.
Well, it's
The interesting stuff, for me, as far as I'm concerned, the interesting stuff's on the top.
Well, it's hard to see all the interesting stuff with all the
Yeah.
stuff that needs to be removed.
Yeah. Side skirts for the body shell here.
Okay.
Wheel insert, spoke insert patterns just
Yep.
there. This is a pair of wheels,
Yep.
incidental. Motor pod in place, and a front splitter here with grill.
Is the motor pod has side mounts doubled?
Yes,
Interesting.
these locations are the slotted ones, and these locations are the scale auto ones.
Okay.
And
Wow.
the slotted
Oh, it'll
ones.
fit either.
But
Yeah, you got either or all 8 if you really want to, but I don't see any reason. And then there's something unique in the middle here. There's a bar just there that you can attach to the front of the existing motor pod, and it reaches out to a hole which is underneath this spoke pattern, which will give it a single central pivot in the middle if you don't want to use these 2 wings. And it's all created by myself and Yona, and we're going to be racing this at Paul Ricard 24 hours in a fortnight.
Hold that up again. Are the front 2 screws on a kind of a suspension spring situation there?
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, they are. So even if you screw these down hard, they're both flexible arms, and you'll do something very similar to a single central pivot, even on 6.
Yep.
Because I normally build a thing like this on 6. I see value in the side mounts, so I use them.
So question for you. Why a central pivot up front and 2 pod location screws at the back?
Well, because there isn't a spring that you would put on a post on its own at the rear in the spring sets that were commonly available to us. Is that enough?
Suspension springs.
If
Yes,
that's your response, that's your response. But the central pivot point in the front allows torsional rotation of the pod. By having 2 screws on the back, you don't get torsional rotation, you get tilt.
Yes.
So you want that.
which you're trying to get torsional rotation as one wheel goes up, the other one comes down. With a 2 screw back, one wheel can come up, but the other one can't correspondingly go down, so it tilts. It doesn't rotate torsionally.
That's correct.
So it sort of defeats the purpose of a central pivot point at the front.
It might do. You know, the central pivot point at the front thing is not something that I'm all that bothered about personally. I can get away with 6 points in a slotted configuration. The question is, do you really want the inside to rise when you go around a corner? Because a central line for the pivots will allow the inside to rise as the outside rolls down.
I mean, if you have a central spline at the front, it's completely negated by 2 screw locations in the back.
Well, the pivot at the front, I don't even believe it does all that much, quite honestly.
Well,
I don't think it matters whether you put a pivot there or you even just allow the pod to flex.
Well, the central pivot has been used since probably, I don't know, late 70s, early 80s. You can go either way. I mean, if you're on a plastic track, having a bit of just let the pod move around a bit to absorb some of the vibrations in the track is a good idea. If you're on a track where the rear tires are predominantly always on the ground, unlike a plastic track because of the surface is rough and joints and stuff, it's theoretically much better to have the tires to load progressively, which you'll get with a torsional rotation as opposed to a tilt in the chassis.
Yeah. Yeah. There are so many things going on in the plastic chassis that I don't think we can. It's easy to overgeneralize and it's easy to presume everything's infinitely stiff, and in reality, it's not. And
Well, there's nothing stiff in a plastic chassis whatsoever.
exactly.
Even metal.
So, what really happens is very difficult to put your finger on, and all you can do is experiment, taste the results, and if it's sweeter, then take it. So we've done a 4-point pod like this. Sorry, a 6-point pod like this. And just for shits and giggles, and for a last-minute decision, we decided to pop this extension on the front of it. And you see, some people really like the idea of a pod being really long.
Well, is he gonna publish it?
Not as it is right now. This is the first print. There's quite a lot of experiment in here, and I'm in the process of assembling one. I have cut the parts apart on another one, and it's in assembly for, like I said, Paul Ricard in a fortnight. No, a week and a half, and I've discovered some elements that aren't optimal, and therefore there would be some changes if we were to do this again. But it's manufactured, or it's designed specifically to fit into a scale auto Cadillac hypercar.
Yeah.
Which you've watched Gio doing the body shell. He's been showing us the body shell. And on that subject, Gio is already on an aeroplane heading for Holland. I think that's a 2-stop, and it's a 24-hour journey for him, but that's where he is.
Is that this weekend?
No, he'll be there this weekend, but the race is next weekend.
Okay.
If you remember, and you looked at my videos in my channel, I actually went last year.
Yeah.
The weekend before.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that would be this coming. Same weekend as the Le Mans 24-hour race on TV. And I'm not going this year because I haven't got the same thing to do that I did in the event run up last year. I haven't got. We know what we're going to race. Basically, we didn't that time. So Gio has got one of these, and he has been popping it together. And as far as I'm aware, it's 90% complete. And like I say, it's never turned a wheel.
Yeah.
But that's that. I thought I'd just briefly show it to you. I didn't want to show it to you any earlier than now because I've got competition.
Una wouldn't let you show it earlier than now.
Well, it's been back and forth a few times about whether or not we should even show it.
Well, there's definitely not enough time for anybody to copy anything.
No, there's
Mine's on the printer already.
I'm sorry?
Mine's on the printer already.
Yeah. You can get the
That's
major dimensions from this.
Dang. Got
Wow. I mean, can you imagine? We have blackout periods in this hobby. Oh my gosh! Wow.
I should probably have gotten a handkerchief and laid it over and said that's all I can show.
Actually, but it has to be silk so that when it comes off like a car body would.
Unfortunately, there's no figure, there's no shape to it. So but anyway, there you go. That's what it is, and that's why I've got it. This is number 2. I've got one on the bench, and you saw MX-16 Sidewinder Motorpod.
Hold on, considering you haven't raced it yet, I would not name it number 2. Pick another name.
No. And I've got an angle winder Motorpod too.
Nice.
That goes in the same place. Same features. What was I showing you? That extension is not visible right now, but there's a couple of holes just here.
Yep.
And it reaches out. And you wouldn't use these two if you were using that one.
Yeah.
But this is the main feature of this, as far as I'm concerned, because there's a lot of it is the same architecture, is that it is extremely lightweight. It's a lot lighter than a
Sorry to
slotted.
interrupt, Wayne. I'm assuming that those are resin prints. Sorry.
Those are SLS, those nylon. Those are shapeways style.
They are that style, but they're actually called Multijet Fusion, MJF.
Oh, okay.
So they're resin.
So no, they're nylon.
Oh, cool.
It's SLS is laser sintering, isn't it? Where you melt the material together.
Yeah. I didn't realize.
If I'm not mistaken, MJF is a Hewlett Packard only manufacturing process, and the material is not welded together with lasers. I think it's glued together.
It's basically like an inkjet printer, an inkjet 2-dimensional printer, except it's 3-dimensional. It goes up and prints layers of instantly cured resins. I didn't realize that they had a liquid nylon.
No, this is a powder. I can confirm this is a powder because in those wheels and in the nooks and crannies, when I take a toothbrush, it goes from being a light grey colour, and I knock off the excess that's not really glued, and it goes darker in colour. And inside of those wheels, I've poked through there with a pin, let's say, and a grey-white powder falls out.
Yep, you're right.
And it's residual from the bath.
It's SLS.
So for us who are new to the technology, which I apparently am, Google's AI says, multi-jet fusion uses an inkjet array to selectively apply fusing and detailing agents across a bed of nylon powder, which are then fused by heating elements into a layer.
No, it's okay.
So it's like a combination of. Thanks, Chris. It's like a combination of SLS and. I thought multi-jet fusion was just. Well, I mean, there are technologies that are definitely just resin, but I thought this was that, but it's not. Interesting.
Yeah, we've been using it for a little while. Yona in particular for his Porsche 911 car. We raced that together in January 24, and we produced the motor pod in the same way that we raced in the McLaren 720 in June last year. And that was all commercially available aftermarket chassis and stuff like that. This is the first time that we've worked together to compile our own chassis. And this is this is a step further in being a bespoke homemade car, to the extent that for the Spotter's Guide, if you remember, every Disco 24 Hour gets a poster which has got all the cars and all the teams and all the details of the entrants and what category they're in and what livery they run and all the rest of that. We were asked for what brand of motor pod and what brand of chassis are you using, and the answer was we haven't actually got a brand, but for the sake of the argument, call it a 201 slot car. 201 slot car. So that was it.
Why did you make it so that it was both scale auto and
slot it?
Yeah.
Well, if we decide to make this a product, then it will fit into both cars.
Okay.
Simple as that. Just makes sense. And if you want to use alternative side positions, you can.
Okay.
I mean, what would you choose?
Okay.
Scale auto with the side wings in those positions, or slot it with the scale auto with the suspension points in the other positions?
So you're positioning yourself to make tens of dollars. That's awesome.
You've doubled your market, or yeah. Okay.
Wow.
So all the options are there. Is why they've got 4 side wings.
Yep. I'm looking forward.
We have an opinion. We know what we raced last year. We know what we raced in Suzuka since then, and I've made my choice. And that's how I will build my car. And that's what we will. It's difficult to determine which are better or why.
Yeah. And you wouldn't trim up the excess post for the other car, one chassis and one pod over the other, just to lighten it up, or you would just leave it universally adapted to both?
Are you asking about the product or the installation?
Yeah, good question.
Okay.
If you're asking about the product, it makes sense for them to all be there. If you're asking
Yes,
about the
got it.
installation,
Yes,
it
during
makes
the
sense.
installation, would you just,
Installation,
yeah,
I would expect that he would clip the unused wings off.
yeah.
Well, you see, the answer to that is a resounding yes, but there is a but, and that is that all of these wings are in a three-dimensionally elevated position by comparison to all the platforms that you mount them on. So that none of these wings touch those blocks that are built into the chassis. They all have a 1 mm gap underneath these wings. So we put a silicone washer in everywhere where these wings are going to touch the chassis. Okay, so if I build that in one configuration with one pair of sides, the other two won't touch the chassis.
Yeah, but why would you leave them in?
Because I've only got 4.
Okay, you don't want to destroy them. But let's say, for example,
ask a technical question, get a technical answer.
if you had unlimited access to them, would you?
Listen, there's so little in terms of weight there that I'm not concerned.
Wait a minute. Wayne's not concerned about weight,
right?
Not concerned.
I'm sorry, sir, but you lie. You lie.
0.01 grams.
And I want this. I want this to balance on its center line. Okay, it's important to me. So you've always got an end bell on a motor and a pinion on a motor on the opposite end and a spur gear on one side that's not there on the other, and these things may or may not end up being a balance. And if for any reason they're not, those available remaining wings actually constitute a very good place to put a tiny amount of weight that has a big effect on the balance of the pod. So there's a reason to actually leave them on. So I'm not, I actually had all the wings on last year's motor pod and I left them on. So I'm not nervous about leaving them on because there's enough room underneath them for the pod to articulate. I mean, the suspension, how far does it move?
Yeah.
I mean, how much ground clearance have we actually got? How much should it move? It should move from the ride height to the ground. And anything beyond that is superfluous. And the ground clearances are in the range of 1 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters most of the time. So,
well, we look forward to seeing those built into cars and how they perform and all that stuff. I think it's time to move on.
Well, the next few weeks are going to be full of this, aren't they? Because we've got 3 individuals who are all going, and
hence
yeah, you know how it gets around this race.
What you were saying? This is it.
Yeah, let's move on.
Thank you. Okay. Jeremy's got his hand up. What would you like to talk about, Jeremy?
Sure. I'm going to show you guys something even more boring than my last time. What? Okay, so this is Greg's probably seen this. This is a race coordinator when you're running a race. And at the end of the race, it saves all the information like, names, lap times, everything into a JSON file. And if you hit the export button on it, it gives you a spreadsheet like this. So I assume you guys are seeing this slotted race. And for the past 10 years or so, we've been racing with this. I grabbed a spreadsheet for each race, and then I go home and I share the information. We get our results updated, and then people have to kind of go through these spreadsheets and look. So here it kind of tells you position 1, the person who won the race is Russ. Jeremy was in second on this race, and it gives you all of your information. You can go into really a lot of detail if you want to go to heat number 6 and see where you were at on each lap. Anyway, it's too much information for a lot of people. So a couple weeks ago, I started writing this, and I hope are you guys able to see my screen here that says Iowa Model Auto Racing?
Yep.
Okay, I never know if it's going to keep me on one tab or not, so I never know. So anyway, this is our website, and what you can do now on our website is if you hit the race results over here, it's going to fetch a script that's going to go and grab all of the results. You have to give it a second. While that's loading, I'll come back to that in a second. What I did was I went to AI this is Grok AI. You could use any kind of AI. And I told it, I said, I need a way to take my spreadsheets that I have. I want to put them in a folder. And when they're placed in that folder, I would like some kind of script to come by, pick up that spreadsheet and get it ready to upload to my website so I don't have to touch anything anymore. And so what it does is when you start working with AI, every time it starts working, you tell it, here's what I need. It will actually give you the code, and all you got to do is copy and paste that. And then Google gives you a free script program. I'm not going to click on this program because it might have some of my information in it, but you just paste the code you want and then give it a test. It'll say run the code. It'll run it. And if you look at the spreadsheet and you come back to it, let me pull this here. So these are where I place my spreadsheets. These are the tracks we've done so far. So we've done Stanwood and Buzzards Bluff Race. If I'm at Stanwood, I come home and I dump it into Stanwood, or if I'm on the Stanwood computer and I dump it into the folder here, it'll add it to one large database, and that database then pulls it into here. And if you see, this is our 2025 results. So right now I've done it with 2 races, and you can see Russ is on top with 96 points. This is how the whole season is going. So I can just direct our users, come to the website, take a look, and you want to see where you're at. Now, the fun thing I think is that I did it all with AI, so it didn't cost me anything. The Google, everything on here has been free so far. And then if a guy is really interested, instead of trying to dig through a spreadsheet, he can come and click on Stanwood Raceway, and he's interested in our Thunder Slot class. This is the last race we had. This is first, second, and third place. I told Groke, I said, hey, on first place, make a gold box around it so it kind of looks like gold for first place, silver for second. But then it also gives you each driver's fastest lap. So Dan on the red lane, his fast lap was a 5.4. And then it also gives you the records for each lane. So the red lane and the blue lane here, these are the record holders and what the record was and the date that it was on. And so that's just information that you can do with AI by just keep asking it questions until it gives you kind of what you want. Like I want a drop down. So I said, can you make each of these racetracks a drop down for me? And it said, sure. And then it rewrote the code and I just pasted it in, went to the next thing. I mean, I don't have this level of coding skills. I kind of hack my way through stuff, but just through the prompts, you're able to make it kind of do what you want to do. And I was blown away by this, but all the guys in my club were like, okay. So anyway, now you can
Jeremy, that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
I thought so. So my summer project is to take that same code I have and say, this is version 4 of my code. Now I want to, because after last week when we talked, somebody said it's kind of nice to get information and keep people engaged. So my next thing will be when a driver, let's just say Bruce, breaks his own record in the red lane on this class at this track, send me a notification or an email or something. So the users will then go, oh, congratulations, Bruce, you set your own personal best record on the red lane today in the NSR Classics. And I think that will keep people like, oh, and it'll automate it because we have a group email list that I use too. That's part of Google Groups, and it automates stuff if I want it to. So I can just send it straight to there, and we'll get a list of if 10 people break their personal best, they'll now know, and they'll go, oh, hey, maybe I did do something right. So that's my summer plan. But anyway, anybody can do this.
And that's all you're referring to their all time. So it's across multiple races, and that's why you're not doing it live while they're racing, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like, this is every time we go to Buzzards Bluff in the NSR Classics here, the drivers with the fastest lap, but it also has their own, let me see here. This is the record for the whole track. Everybody who's gone to Buzzard Bluff, nobody's ever done faster than a 5.3 in the red lane. But like, if Jeremy's here, today I did a 5.7, which stunk. But if my record was a 5.5 in the red lane, it would give me a notification is what I'm planning. So I can go, oh, I did do better today. I didn't do better today. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a way to, because nobody wants to dig through spreadsheets when you're not at work, except for me, just because I'm a nerd. But I thought this was a little better way to do it. And like I said, every single thing I did here was free from Google Drive. Like I said, you can even, this is the coolest part. If you have we have, 10 different tracks or whatever. Each track has its own computer, but if I share the folders, if I go to Tamarack, I go to his computer and share that folder on his Google Drive app. When the results come in, he can just drop them in his computer there, and then later in the day, like an hour later, it'll pick it up and it'll update everything live, and I won't have to touch anything then. But that's just one of the weird things that I'm trying to get going. I mean, it's all baby steps to get to this point, but even now, not having to touch a spreadsheet has been, it's just wonderful, like pulling up a website and it's ready to go. So any AI can do this. Just tell it what you want to do. You can do everything, and if you have a Google, the ecosystem works for this.
Does it
even
say
tell
Big Brother is name is Jeremy?
Jeremy. So can you tell this is using Ultimate Racer, right?
No,
Race coordinator. But
race coordinator. Sorry. Race
yeah,
coordinator.
I don't know what kind of data you get out of the other programs, but I'm sure it's something similar because
that's what I meant. I misspoke.
Yeah.
Can you tell Race Coordinator to save to a different folder? Like, could you specify what folder it saves to, and then make that folder the Google Drive folder?
You probably could do something like that, but the thing is that I need to keep things separated because if I drop it in the Stanwood race, it updates the Stanwood races. But because in that program, he doesn't have the name of he just assumes you're only using one track. He doesn't know you're using 10 different tracks. So it just thinks it's one track, and then we just have one giant mess. And that's the same thing with like usernames. I have to make sure Jeremy C is not Jeremy Colbert because then it's two different drivers, and then
I've used Race Coordinator. It's got you can set up multiple tracks in Race Coordinator.
You can, but then you've got to go to a drop down, add a new track, and then switch back to the other track. But what I'm saying is in the JSON file that it dumps out doesn't have the name of the track here. In this file here, I would tell it, if there's a driver in this position here, assume that's first place on the spreadsheet, and then assign it, 10 points. And then because we do 10 to 0 points here, and then I would go down here, and the first time I did it, it was a little off, and I said, no, you're looking at A7 would be where it starts, and it's just like talking to a person, like if you were typing with a person and said, oh, okay, and he comes back and he updates his little Grok code, and I paste it in and I run it, and then okay, yeah, that one looks good. Let's go to the next one. And so anybody can do it. Like you don't have to be a technical nerd. You just have to sit there and talk to Grok for. And the cool thing about it, Grok is free, so it's like you can do 30 inputs every 2 hours. So my first input would go through, but by the time I got through testing coming back, I was reset to 30. So I was like, I didn't have to pay for Grok to write all that. I don't know, it was Grok or Grok.
Talking about Grok.
I was about to ask you, have you hit the limit of requests?
It's Grok, not Grok.
I like Grok. Grok AI.
Grok is an old school nerd term. Do you grok that? Do you understand it?
So anyway,
so I wanted to say, generally speaking, AI should burn in hell. But in this particular case, what it's doing is democratizing, which I also hate that word, but basically it's making this kind of thing accessible to anyone, right?
Yeah.
Like you have an idea to take all this data, and it would take weeks to do all this, to write your own code, right? But to be able to just go onto Grok and say, hey, can you help me do this? And it does it, right? That's fantastic because you're not taking somebody's job, for crying out loud. This is just a hobby pastime, right?
Well, yeah, and you could go on like Fiverr and hire somebody to do the code and whatever. But the code, but I'm saying like their code, they would send it to you, send it back, you test, you say. I mean, this would have taken me 6 months to get done with a human, interacting, emails, trying to try it out.
To me, this is like the ideal purpose for AI. But there's all sorts of corporate jobs being replaced by AI. It's ridiculous.
So I used to joke with people that were annoying was that I'm going to replace you with a shell script if you keep going. Now I think I could actually replace them with a shell script. So anyway, that's how it can be done. It can all be done free. And like even this Google Sites, it's a free site from Google. Well, I mean, you're trading information, but it's one of their free sites. So
you need to hop on Fiverr and put yourself up as the slot car AI wizard.
Yeah.
I'll help you AI-ify your slot car results.
I know it's not really slot car related only in that what I did with it, but it's just like there's so many clubs out there where getting this information is such a pain in the butt. And the only reason I started working on it was because our guy who usually tracks the points, we send him a picture of the points and he manually puts them all in. He's been sick, so we haven't got him for like the last 3 months. And I was like, okay, let me see what I can do here. And so I think I got it working. And
that's basically where my club is one of the dudes takes a photograph of the race screen,
race
results,
and then types them up,
and then types them all in.
Yeah, Yeah.
Well, to Greg's point, whenever this chap gets better, he's obviously now out of a job.
Yeah,
An unpaid job.
With Zoom, I could literally probably right now turn on an AI host to take over my position. But
That was my share.
No, never.
I hope somebody gets out there and does it and shows it. And
Just
let's
as an aside, it might be worthwhile asking Grok to write a love letter.
God, no, don't. That's an off topic, Wayne. We're moving on from that. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
It's what I used it for.
How do we know that Greg's
Don't
really
make me mute you.
AI generated?
I wish to know that.
Okay, moving on. Any
got
other
one.
show and tell?
I got one.
Go ahead, Chris, and then we'll get to Mr. Weber.
Okay. Is Jim here? Jim Rose?
Yeah, he's still here.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a picture I dug out for you.
Uh-oh.
From something you were talking about a couple of weeks ago.
Wow.
Cool.
Now, who was it? Was it Russ or Jim that showed up?
Russ has passed away about 10 years ago, so.
Okay. This was a chassis that Russ built in late 1969. So it's been refurbed and cleaned up, but not really altered from what it was. And you can tell 1969 we were still using the Cox gears and stuff back then. So, and they engraved the thing on the bottom. So anyway, you mentioned his name, and I thought I had some stuff around somewhere, so I thought I would just put together a picture. So this is what a pretty quick pro slot car looked like in 1969.
Beautiful. And that was after you worked your magic on to make it all nice.
So
and
cool.
Not really.
Thank you, Chris.
Not a clean, I just cleaned some of the old goo off of it.
Do you have that car?
Huh?
Do you still have that car?
No. No, that was a few. I thought it's no.
Dang it. All right, I think we're done with that. Go ahead, Mr. Weber.
Okay, I just want to report on a few things I acquired recently and some work I've done. We talked about this because I asked a few days ago, a few programs ago. This is one of those Spry, whatever that means. Little reciprocating sander. Does anybody else have one of those? It's basically a USB rechargeable pin type sander. Let's see here. I'm pulling it out of its little box, and there's the device.
Looks more like a lightsaber.
Yeah, wannabe. Okay, so then this cap is pretty tight. I guess they don't want it to immediately come loose. And you have a
hold it in front of your shirt.
Hold on. Let me get rid of this image in the background. Which Greg always reminds me I should do. And I always forget. Nah, I can't. Darn it. Sorry.
In front of your shirt. Just don't hit your neck.
Yep.
We can see it in front of your shirt.
Yeah, just hold it up as long as you keep it in front of your body.
Yep.
There you go, in front of your body.
There we go. Okay, so it comes with multiple of these little sanding heads that fit into the top, and they have different shapes, and it comes with pre-cut adhesive backed sandpaper of various
grits.
There you go. And so that's kind of the shirt. There we go. Then you press this button on the front and lots of things light up. So you have the lightsaber thing here. You can change the speed. I'm sure you can't hear that, but It has 3 speeds, and the reciprocating head is hopping around. Can you see it moving?
Yep.
Way. Works. It seems to work pretty good, but boy, it's tiny. You cover small spaces, but it's good to fit in creases and crevices and curves and stuff like that on some of these bodies. And this is a 1956 Chevrolet coupe resin body, 1/32 scale. And when it's from eBay, slush cast from a 3D print. You can, and it has a kind of rough 3D print surfaces. But as it came, it was just completely solid. There were no cutouts for the wheel wells or the windows, that kind of thing. So I've been working on it a little bit, and it's kind of coming along. I'm using this little sander in places and finding that it needs more help than, I need more help moving the material more quickly. And that's kind of coming along. I told you about my 85-year-old lady widow neighbor who gave me a slot car not long ago. She's interested in slot cars, and she told me that when she graduated from high school, her father got her a brand new 1956 Chevrolet. It was a sedan, but that's what she drove around when she got out of high school. So I'm gonna fix that up for her. Another thing was I got some of this Vallejo liquid mask. Okay, how's it different from micro mask? You might say, you might ask, from micro scale. Well, micro mask is not recommended for water-based, using for water-based paint, but you can use this with water-based paint. And apparently the adhesive comes off by rubbing the adhesive rather than, it peels, but it doesn't react to water, even though it is an acrylic based material. So it's kind of interesting. This bottle of 85 milliliters was about $11 on. So
have you used it yet?
I have not. No.
It's really good stuff, Jim.
Is it good? Good. Glad to hear that. But it'll be great for of course, stripes and roundels and things like that on bodies, I think. Let's see, anything else? Yep. Nope, I guess that's it.
Well, that was good. Now I know what to do with my old electric toothbrushes.
That's what it reminded me of.
That's probably exactly what it is.
Okay, here's one of these.
There you go.
That's a man's toothbrush. There.
Use the actual sandpaper in there.
Yeah,
just make sure it's wet and dry.
You don't have any teeth left when you. But yeah, this is a Black & Decker or something like that. Rubbermaid. Anyway, yeah, that's all I've got.
All righty. Any other show and tell? Looking for waving hands. Seeing none, we'll move on to Club Corner. If you got some past, present, or future racing you want to talk about, now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lenny.
Hang on. Oh, you caught me by surprise. Hang on.
Well, I'll talk about mine while you're getting ready. Which is pretty
okay, right. Good work.
So this was the second race of our NSR GT Modern GT series. The first week, my AMG ran pretty good, but I decided to see if I could make it run even better. I rewatched what Jim was showing on the chat a couple weeks ago. Decided to swing by the local sporting goods store. They did not have any golf tape. I didn't want to order it off of Amazon because I knew I had some lead of variety kinds in my stash. So I looked to see what I had, and I only had fairly thick lead sheet. So I decided to just use some of the fishing weight lead, which is that, like 3/16 diameter, lead rope, basically.
Jesus.
And I found a piece that was about 10 grams, 9.9 grams, because that's our limit. And I basically made a big V shape that fit into the pod of the car, because I didn't, like ask about it, but generally speaking, the rules are not to be carving plastic out of your car anywhere. So in order to do a triangular sheet, like he showed, I would have had to carve out all of the plastic for the magnet holders. But rather than doing that, I just put a V shape in there. And it was probably way more weight than necessary, but I just said, you know what? I'll just stick almost the limit into the pod. And it worked pretty darn good. The car was really calm and predictable. It wasn't particularly fast because I put so much extra weight in there. But, it got me on the podium, and I can't complain about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Jim showed, a little bit of weight down in the pod, a little bit of weight on the chassis. Probably would be even better to do it like he showed rather than what I did. But yeah, it made that car run quite
Was
nice.
that on wood or on plastic, Greg?
Last week was on plastic. This week was on wood. So it was even better. That was half the reason I did it, is because I kind of figured that my plastic setup was not going to be quite so good on the wood. A little bit too chattery probably.
And what did the car weigh on wood?
The total weight with the lead was, I think, 84 grams.
Okay. And what tires?
Stock Super Grips.
Okay. Yeah, that's on wood. If you go across all the proxies on wood with rubber tires, mid 80s is right there.
Yeah. It was easy to drive. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't as quick as it had been without the weight, which didn't surprise me. But it was so much more predictable. Even when I slid too wide, it was not coming out. I don't think I had any offs that weren't just a straight up, crash with another car, or forgetting to let go of the trigger.
And what motor did you have?
We down motored them to the Baby King, so 17K.
Do you have to run those? Is that a rule?
That's the spec motor, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and stock gearing.
Okay, yeah. No, that's fine.
You can really tell when you weight up a car with a tiny motor like that, can't you?
Sorry?
It didn't feel like it was having problems. It just wasn't as
busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll trade predictable for jumpy any day of the week. But yeah, I could probably cut that weight in half and still have a good benefit without quite so much inertial dampening. All right, I'm done. Are you ready, Lenny?
Yeah, mate. All good. Okay. Hopefully you'll see that. Yep. All right. Just a couple of quick ones. We ran a 36-minute Group 5 race on the Tuesday night before last. So not last Tuesday night. It was a normal weekly race. So that's the outright scores there. So Andrew won it by 11 laps. That's over 36 minutes. So that's basically 3 12-minute legs joined together in one race. So and I was second, and Ian was third. Andrew was using a Ferrari. I had a Porsche, and I think Ian had a Ferrari as well, 312 BB. Then Tim, who's only been with us about a month, and he's moving up the field. He'll be winning races before long. Jeff had a bit of a shocker. Steve had a fairly ordinary run. Norm was his usual erratic self. He put in a good performance one night, and then the next week he'll be an absolute shocker. George, Callum, Andrew, and Claude. Claude's our new guy, straight into slot cars. After he's only been with us a couple of months, so he's doing pretty well, considering. And then we run a handicap component. This is all a bit convoluted, I know, but basically I find the best 3 scores from the last 3, or the best score out of the last 3 Group 5 races we've run, and then put them into this column here. So that's their best scores. Claude's previous best 3-minute race was 74 laps, as opposed to Andrew, who's the fastest guy, 110. And then to get I then work out the lap difference between the fastest to the slowest. So it works out it was 36 laps to difference between Claude and Andrew. The rest of us are in here different values. Then you multiply by 3 to get your 36-minute differences. So Claude got a lap bonus of 108 laps to Andrew's 0. So that's the overall race scores there. And then when you add in the bonuses, you get your handicap score. So Claude finished up winning it on handicap, 358. That's how much he's improved in the last few months. I think he averaged about an 82 for the for the 3 legs. Then Norm put in got a good result. Tim was there. Ian and I finished on the same lap. Ian beat me by about half a lap. So then Andrew came in on his scratch score of 4 laps behind us, and then there's the rest of them: George, Steve. George Jeff had a shocker, as I said. He was way off his best, and then Andrew G, who won the previous handicap race, he finished last. Unfortunately, he didn't have a very good night. So yeah, so that's basically it for that. So bit of encouragement for Claude and Norm, get some good spots, and it's very close in the middle here. So it seems like the handicapping's working. And then finally, coming the end of the month on the 28th of June, we're having our annual Mick Spry Trophy Day. There's Mick there in his high-vis top. That was standard uniform for Mick. We really saw him out of a high-vis top. So much so, the first year we all wore high-vis in tribute to him. Mick passed away in 2019, just before the pandemic struck. He had a heart attack, passed away, unfortunately. Top bloke, willing to share his knowledge with everybody. Anybody that accused him of cheating or whatever, or wasn't playing the game fair, first thing he'd do was rip the body off it and show him. Yeah, and then point out what he'd done. And he was very open about it. Came to us from professional golfing, because he was a professional golfer at one stage, winning quite a few regional tournaments around South Australia. And then I think his health got the better of him, so he had to give it away. And so this year we're running 3 classes for 3 20-minute races. So we've got classic sports, Group C, and LMP / sports prototypes. And there's the perpetual trophy. There'll be individual trophies for the first, second, and third, and then certificates for the individual class wins. So it's a big day for us. Everybody remembers Mick very fondly, and we miss him terribly. It's in quite a few years now, but his absence is still noted. So yeah, so that'll be on the 28th of June. So I'm hoping for a good entry roll up. I'm not going to shut it off at 16, but at the moment we've got 10, so we've still got a few weeks to go. So hopefully we'll get a few people outside our own group to come and have a race, because he was well known throughout the slotting community in South Australia. All right, I'll get out your way. That's the end of me. Thanks for listening.
And rest in peace, Mick.
Yes.
Hey, can I ask what you're using for your race management system? What program was that?
I use Race Coordinator, but it's version 9.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, don't change anything now. It's working.
No. We upgraded to version 14 at one stage, and everything went pear-shaped, so we went back to formatted the computer and went back to version 9. It's got a few custom XAMLs on it that one of our local guys has put in for us, so we're happy with that.
Yep. All righty, thank you, sir. Mr. Auer, are you ready?
Yeah. Let me share. Come on. Okay.
There we go.
So this is our second race that we had. The first race we had was Stockers, and I got my clock cleaned pretty good. But there was a reason, and it's the first time I've encountered this, which is my car wouldn't change lanes, and I thought it was just the chip had raised a bit in the chassis, but I glued it down and got it work. I thought it working. It counted laps fine, but it just wouldn't change lanes, and I couldn't get in the pits. So I lost a whole bunch of laps.
That's super weird because lap counting is usually more finicky than lane changing is.
Well, yeah, you would think.
It is.
It counted laps every time with no problem at all, but it would not get into the pits for fuel. So every time I'd have a problem there. Then we stopped a couple of times. If you look at the videos, it's like
this was Scalextric, right? Not oxygen.
Right. Right. It was. Yeah. No short laps here, but problem is, and I switched controllers afterwards because I switched cars, and it still didn't change lanes right. So it was weird. So for the second race, I shut the whole program down completely and then restarted it. And with the LMP cars that we ran for the second race, it was fine with no problem. So,
do you ever bring up the controller display?
Once in a while, yeah.
Yeah. Next time that happens, pop it up, and because it shows, it shows little lights for every single thing, the buttons and the trigger and everything.
Oh no, I haven't brought that up, so I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
You have any idea where that's located?
It's in the display menu. Off the top of my head, no, but I remember there is definitely a display that shows what the controller inputs are and when they're being activated or not.
Yeah,
it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, well, typical hidden in plain sight, as PC Lap Counter is wont to do.
Yep.
Okay, I will take a look at that and see. Anyway,
did you spend your race without fuel and following around pace cars?
Pardon me?
Did you spend the whole race following pace cars without fuel?
Somewhat, yeah.
Hmm.
Well, if it doesn't record laps when you don't have any fuel, so I stopped and tried to repair it a couple times, and then I stick my car in there and fueled up, and it fueled okay, so the button was apparently working.
So we're not looking at the results for that race.
No, it's not for that race.
Okay. I'm like, you're on the top with friggin' 10 laps ahead. What are you?
Yeah, right. Well, the second race I made up for it, as you can see. So, to be fair, the first race with the stock cars, Joel was right in the mix, which is unusual. He had no problem, but he had a good car, and he stayed within his limits on that. And he seems to have a lot more trouble when we get more power. And of course, the slotted LMP cars are a lot more power with the flat six in them. And obviously he was quite far off at that point. But I had a good car. And we choose the cars by lot, so it's you never know which one you're going to get. But my car was pretty decent, and which was the Audi R18 e-tron, the four-wheel drive, but it's been converted to two-wheel drive. And it handled fairly well. All of these cars I tested ahead of time, and I came within hundredths of a second of each other. So it was a fair shake for everybody on that one. So that's a good sign. Once you set those things up, and it's nice because you can pull them off the shelf and just use them. You know, I can count on them being pretty reasonable and not having to do a lot of tuning for the specific conditions. I don't have a lot of differences in the conditions on my track, but it's a lot warmer now. We've been hitting hundreds over the last few days, and it's been quite warm. So we're about 10 degrees warmer, and that makes a slight difference in the way. But the chassis on these just really are set up fairly well, and there's no problems at all in that regard. So I made up for myself in the second race and took it home.
Does your track get faster whilst it's warm, Mike?
Not necessarily. You can get a little better traction as a result of the temp being up a little bit, but it sometimes will be too much. You know, if I've tuned the cars for, you know, say around 62, 63 degrees, which it commonly is in here without a problem. And then the temp goes up, you have too much traction and you can tend to bicycle out. So you have to be a little bit careful. It does seem to be more changeable with urethane tires, which I use on the stock cars, than with rubber tires that I use on all the rest of the cars. So, which is interesting.
So you got heat in there. Do you have AC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
So you don't.
I didn't bring it down as far. There's still, you know, I didn't want to bring it down to 62 degrees in here. I can do that.
Yeah.
But you know,
so heating up to a comfortable degree and then cooling down to a comfortable is not the same temperature. It's usually about 10 degrees.
So that's my point. There's only about a 10 degree Fahrenheit difference in the temps.
Yeah. And that's
so
enough.
It's not a lot, but it is kind of interesting the changes that will happen with traction.
Yeah.
But at any rate,
that 10 degree difference is basically from cool to warm.
Yeah. So
I've raced on plastic track that was 28 degrees centigrade. I don't know whether that's what that is in Fs.
I think that's pretty warm.
Pretty warm. It is pretty warm. It's black. It was the track is underneath a tin roof, and the tin roof had got the sun blazing on it. No insulation in the tin roof, and then the tin roof was radiating straight down onto us. And the track, being black, had gotten to 28 degrees. It was warm to the touch, just about, and you could. I laser temp gunned on it. Have you done a conversion on that, Greg?
That's 82.
Yeah, it's quite a bit, isn't it?
That's pretty warm.
I agree.
And it was intriguing because I felt as though the plastic track was actually laying slightly flatter. I thought it had gone a little more pliable and laid flatter on that day on those days, you know.
Yeah.
Could have. Yeah.
At any rate, it was a good race series, although I was a little frustrated, but I still haven't I'm going to try the car set up as it was before and see if I can figure out what went wrong. But my guess is it had to be something in the programming, in the power base or something like that changed, because I had the problem with either car and none of the other guys had the problem. So I don't know what. I haven't investigated yet. I haven't had time. We got a bunch of people coming and I got other stuff that I got to do. So
the fact that the APB is a slave to the program means that a program bug could easily screw with all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So rebooting the program was probably the best course of action at the time.
Yeah. I didn't want to start all over with it, but it was a mystery. So I'll test the car out since it's still in its as was condition, and see what happens, and then I'll just at least know that next time that happens, if it does. One thing that I've noticed is that if I'm testing and I'm fixing on a car or messing around with it, and the program shuts down, I know on RCS 64 sometimes that screws with things. In RCS 64, it would screw with the voice. It would take the voice away from it. So I'd have to shut it down and restart it, and then the noises, the sound would come back.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. And it did shut down for a while, and I noticed it just before we started racing. So there's a possibility that something was introduced there, whatever. But hopefully I won't encounter it again, and I'll see what's going on. Anyway, that's all that was happening there. Other than that, it was a good session overall.
All right, good stuff.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Rose, are you ready?
Yep.
Go for it.
We are getting ready, or we just ran our first hypercar race last week. And we are running these cars with stock motors, open gearing, open tires. And they are really fast. I tested both of these cars at Ted Essie's High Sierra Speedway the day before the race. And both of these cars ran faster than the cars from the Czech Republic that ran the proxy race. So these cars are seriously fast. So the Cadillac was the first car to run in the 4.5s at his track, and we're getting a handle on these things. They run really good, and surprisingly, they're fairly easy to drive with that powerful a motor. I even turned the power up. I run 1329 on these cars in gear ratio, and they've got a lot of power. The next day at Motown, a couple days later at Motown, we ran our first actual race, and this is a whole different ballgame because it's on a spray glue-ish type track. And I had a pretty bad day in this race, but the race itself turned out pretty good. My cars were really fast in practice. I loaned the Porsche to one of the amateur drivers who's no longer an amateur because he finished second overall with the car. So my backup car was better than my primary car. Like I said, I had issues.
Did you sabotage him? Now he's up. Now he has to go up and.
Yeah, he has to run as a pro. Well, he wanted to. He's one of those guys that I want to get and be racing with the fast guy. So he's enthused about it. And I gave him a car that was capable of doing it. I think he qualified third, finished second, had a great day. And so I was very happy with that. But the grid looks good. We had one Peugeot and a bunch of Porsches and BMWs, Cadillacs. So the grid was very good. And so it's going to be a success, I think. And like I said, the cars are really fast. They are the fastest car. Trying to think of a track that they're not the fastest. Fast track. Well, we don't run under fast track. So the places where these cars have run in Northern California, they are the fastest cars. So they're just really good. And saw my video today. The BMW should be out any day now. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Those are Scale Auto.
These are all, it's a Scale Auto hypercar class. We're not calling it LMP or anything like that. This is strictly hypercar. So the current cars, and we only allow Scale Auto because I think they're the only ones that make cars other than Scale Electrics. We're not counting that. But, so the LMP cars from Slotted are not in this class. They're LMP2 cars, so we don't allow them. It's a spec class.
So
did you keep this?
Go ahead, Mike.
Did you keep the suspension in them, Jim, or did you?
Absolutely not. No, you know, I know you guys do, and it works. But on wood, that's the first thing we do is we take it out.
Okay.
The pod on this car is as tight as I can get it and still have movement. It has free movement. You know, it's like when you screw a screw in and you back off, so it's free, but it's as tight as it can be. So it's basically that. Strapping tape on the bottom helped noticeably.
Yeah.
It does whatever dampening it does, the voodoo.
It works, yeah.
But it works. It just it's not so much faster, but the car feels much better.
I found that too.
Yeah.
Did you use the two screw mount in the front or the single screw?
I used the 2 screw mount.
Yeah, I have 2, and I found it to be better.
Yeah, that's the only way I've tried these. I figured I'd just start with that because I kind of it works on the other cars, so I haven't tried anything else. Some people have tried the extension, which extends that, kind of like what Wayne was talking about before, extends pivot point forward. But I don't think anybody running on that day had that. So, like I said, it's a success. I was doing announcing throughout the day and on our live stream. So this is basically the only picture I got. But I love these cars. They look good. They're contemporary. They're all cars that race together. So it's kind of my thing is I want cars that really race together on the track. I know a lot of people, it's not a big deal and perfectly welcome to that opinion, but I like it when these are the cars that are racing right now, actually almost right now at Le Mans a couple hours ago.
Yeah.
So that's our racing at Motown. We've got some
don't move on just yet, Jim. Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
I can't interrupt without my headset on. So if somebody wanted to run a Scalextric body, does the class allow them to use a 3D chassis and other spec parts, or?
No, I won't be buying one of Wayne's chassis.
I'm not telling you, I'm not saying.
No, we don't.
No.
Yeah, we
You can't
don't.
buy one.
Most of the classes, I think all of the classes in Northern California do not allow 3D printed chassis.
Okay.
There's reasons for it. We don't want, and Scale Auto actually makes a 3D printed chassis for these cars.
Yeah.
Directly from Scale Auto, but it's about $18. So we're not allowing that for cost reasons.
Yeah.
If it makes the car go 2/10 faster and everybody's got to buy it,
Who cares?
everybody's got 2/10 faster, and they're out almost $20. So
everybody buys it.
you're
Yeah.
limited to the stock chassis or the firm chassis, not the 3D printed chassis.
That makes sense.
How sticky is that track, Jim?
It's very well. It's been spray glued. You know the track. It's Monty Owen's track.
Yeah.
It's been spray glued for probably 30 years. So the track is really sticky. We do clean it off as much as we can or as good as we can, but it's a sticky track.
Do they go back to glue in between your races or no?
Once a month they run on this track, so not often.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So it does get spray glued.
Yeah, you're not getting
not
that
a lot, but yes, probably once a month, and then immediately spray.
You're not getting that off.
So the tires that work on this are totally, as I mentioned, I ran this at Ted Essie's, which I consider a normal track. I was running G25s. If I run G25s on this track, the car will just bog. So this is more, I was running 28s, or Super Grips work very well on this track. So it's just a whole different setup.
What will you do when the slotted Toyota comes along?
It will not be allowed.
You're going to stick with the Scale Auto only? Yeah.
This is as of now, and I don't control the rules, but I have a lot of input in the rules. So this is very much like Group C. This is going to be a Scale Auto class.
Perfect.
Groups. There are other people that make Group Cs. The MR slot car is one of them, but our our Group C is slotted only. Our Group 5 is racer sideways only. So we try to keep it. Most of the classes like that, so it's not going to be, well, I got to go buy this car, or somebody else comes out with something new. So we try to keep it somewhat like that. The GT class is totally different because we allow different manufacturers. The only issue we would have is, let's say somebody like Avant Slot, which they just gave, and they didn't do this, so I'm just if they came out with a GT3 car that had a 10-gram body, it would not be allowed. So we're trying to keep them somewhat equal without somebody coming out with this killer car that everybody has to ditch their cars and obsoletes everything in everybody's box in that particular class. So that's the reasons behind it. Not always the right reasons, but that's the reasons.
No, it's a good reason.
Pardon my ignorance on what Scale Auto offers, but how many of these cars in your photograph there are started out as white kits? And how many of them were?
The Peugeot was a white kit because that's the only way that comes right now. The 3 in the front row are liveried kits. The two in the middle, obviously the one I'm waiting for the decals for mine, so I don't have any decals on that car that I loaned. The gray car is a painted car. The 3 in the back row are all liveried cars.
Okay, cool.
So it's about half and half. At Motown, a lot of people like to do their own, like to do white kits.
That's great.
Popular.
Yep.
So I love the class. The cars we were a little concerned how they would work. We were also concerned on whether they'd break. These bodies are 2-piece. The front clip is the main body is one piece. The front end is a different piece, and they're screwed together. And we had some seriously hard crashes. If you watch the live stream, there were some seriously hard crashes and nothing that I know of broke. So they turned out to be pretty durable as well. So great class, love it. They run good. They're really fast.
There's the new Ferraris coming in that Scale Auto soon, eh? You know that, Jim?
Ferrari, the Alpine, I believe the Lamborghini, the BMW is supposed to be on its way to dealers now.
Yeah.
And so they'll be 5 or 6.
It's interesting with the Ferrari. The Ferrari will come like the rest with a 2-piece body. But since there is no licensing agreement, Yvonne is doing the rear end of the Ferrari mated to a front end piece that looks like nothing.
Looks like a Glickenhaus.
Yet you can buy a separate Ferrari nose piece.
Yeah.
So you'll be buying an RTR car with a Ferrari rear end and a nondescript front end, and then you'll be able to buy part number whatever it's going to be, which will be the real Ferrari front end, and then you put that on, and now you have a Ferrari.
The other thing I noticed now that you mentioned that is I have the Porsche and the Cadillac, and these are very similar to the Thunder slot in that the chassis is the same. I can put the Porsche body on the Cadillac.
Yeah.
The difference is around the nose,
yeah,
the shape, and the rear splitters or the rear diffusers.
Yeah.
But the base chassis is the same, and I could change. I don't know about the Peugeot because I don't have one, but the other two would swap.
Yeah. Well, anytime you can make one chassis instead of two, it's you know.
And it makes it better for stock car racing because now theoretically they're all equal. There's not one short and one long and one wide and one narrow, and so it somewhat levels the playing field. And the real cars are that way too, so that's not just because of that.
Of course, the Valkyrie is also in the pipeline for this brand and category as well.
Yeah, that's supposed to be next year, I think, or they said 2026. So, but yeah, it's on the way.
Are there sales? Does anybody know? Are their sales going pretty good? Because they're releasing a lot of these, so I assume they're going okay.
They're releasing a lot of everything. It's amazing the stuff they're turning out.
Yeah.
They're sold. They seem to be sold out. I know this livery is either expensive or hard to get. The other Porsche liveries are expensive or hard to get. So it seems like they're selling out. Sell as many as they can build. So
the most recent livery on that grid, I think, is that one in the middle at the back, Wellen Cadillac.
Yeah, the three Cadillacs. The yellow. There's a yellow one. There's all three of them: the blue one, the red one, the yellow one.
Yeah.
That's the latest, isn't it?
Yeah. And then the Hertz car, they said they're coming out with because Hertz is now sponsoring Cadillac this year. So the Hertz livery will be on a Cadillac, and they've announced they're going to do that. So that'll be kind of cool. So they're kind of keeping up with what's going on. And since they're going to be racing these cars, looks like now through 2032, we're going to have 5 or 6 years of the same cars on the track.
And plenty of livery changes in the meantime.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we've got the other ones coming. Then we have, the McLaren, the Ford, the Hyundai, all kinds of they'll probably come out with in the future. So anyway, just a real couple quick things coming up. Races coming up. We've got the MR Slot Car. I'm sorry, it's now called the California Challenge for political reasons. I'm not going to talk about. It is using MR Slot Car Jaguars. Going back to what Chris mentioned when we were talking about the center pivot, this car rolls through the 290-degree fast left-handers on this track as good as any car I've ever driven. And I'm sure it's because of the way the pivot, the pod pivots. And so we've got this race coming up in 2 weeks. It's an Electric Dreams race at Motown, and Marco will be up. So we hope to have a good race with quite a few people. And we're going to be starting Friday night racing. Motown is expanding. And so we're going to be alternating between these three cars on Friday nights starting in July, going through the end of the year. So we got all kinds of cool stuff coming up at Motown currently as well as in the future.
I would like to point out that one of those classes was the Three Amigos.
Yes.
Yeah. That you talked about.
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they are. Motown has. How can I say it? Motown will be carrying them, even though it's sold strictly through Slot Car Corner. So Motown and Slot Car Corner have discussed it. So he will be inventorying them and bringing them in for customers that are local only. So you'll have to go in the store and buy one, but you'll be able to get it directly through Motown.
Buy a what?
I'm not privy to the behind the scenes deals, but I know that's going to happen. So
3A3D is Three Amigos. So that's Jorge and Harry. And I don't know the third amigo.
Gabe.
Shotgun Dave.
Yeah, so they're all 3D printed. It's a 3D printed chassis, separate motor pod, 3D printed the chassis, and I showed it before. The chassis and the pod are PLA, and the body is resin.
Yeah, showed it 2 weeks ago, I think. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Alrighty, thank you, sir. And Jeremy, what you got?
Okay, we had some racing in Iowa. Let me share my screen. I won't go too long. Let me see. Okay. So we went to Buzzard's Bluff, which is in Makokata, Iowa, home to Iowa's largest underground cave and 6,000 people. So if you stop out, make it a destination. We raced all kinds of races, and it was the owner's birthday. So it was really weird because he won 4 of the races. And I was like, wait, something's going on here. This is crazy. But anyway, we get to the GT race, and we're using a new format that I've been advocating for. And it's by far my favorite format we've found so far. But anyway, in the race, this is Russ. Russ wins every race. 99% of the races, Russ will win. But if you look here on fastest lap, this kid got a 5.4, and then his median lap also is 6.0, and you're thinking, oh, that's a winning recipe right there, considering Russ is only doing 6.034. I should be beating him. I can do it. And so in Race Coordinator, when you're getting to different points in the race, if you listen to the lady talk, she'll say new heat leader because somebody's now leading a heat. And then at different points, she'll say new race leader because in the overall race, when there's 7 people, you don't know where everybody is, but you hear new race leader, you think, oh, I got the lead. I took the lead. But the problem here was that I started the race. I started on the track, and we're doing European round robin. So I just got lucky and went through all 4 lanes. I got to go through all 4 lanes and then sit out and marshal. And as I'm marshaling on the corner, I'm looking at my name, and I start at the bottom, of course, and I start to go up. And then I'm like, I'm going up, and I get to, I'm at the top. I'm like, oh, I'm at the top. This can't be happening. This never happens. And then I'm listening, and the track owner, Jim, he comes in, he's below me. I'm like, okay, I'm still holding top. My median scores are happening. It's all good. And let me show you the track. This is the track. If you look at this, I think it's this line right here is where the sensor is. What is that sensor when you have like 2 pieces that come together and it triggers?
Dead strip.
Dead strip. He's got a dead strip here, right? So we come around. I'm cornering over in this corner by where this guy's head is because this is a kind of a hard corner to marshal. And as Russ is coming along, he's getting all the way to the end on his last lap. The time's about to run out. And right here, I hear new race leader. And boom, he crosses, and I go, no. It just killed me. But this was the best race I've had all year. Even though I didn't win, it's just like I'm watching the stats go up. I'm planning, I'm looking, I'm seeing, I've got better scores than him. And within that last like 4 inches, new race leader just broke my heart. But it's still a good race. And everybody had a good time that day. I think this new race format we tried worked pretty well. And that is the only exciting story I have from Iowa this week. But I was thrilled.
It sucks that you were the one that got kicked down rather than the one who got the win. But those are the best races.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's like everything was, the stars were all lined up too. And this wasn't even my regular car. I was going to bring a different car, but I just threw this one. I had it ready to go. It was the Ford GT40 from Racer Sideways. And for some reason, whatever combination I put in, I didn't really test it that good. But when I would hit the straights, it almost felt like turbo lag. It would go fast, and all of a sudden, whoa, take off, and then slow down in the corners. I was like, this is actually handling really well, and it surprised the hell out of me. But it was just one of those days where things were going right. And second place is still okay, but it was a great day of racing.
Better to lose by inches than win by 10 miles.
That's true.
Yep.
Well, that's there are differences of opinion on that.
Yeah. Totally agree.
I don't know.
They're all great.
To those who are there for fun versus to win.
It was fab to see Jeremy so lit up about it as well, as he explained.
Well,
just speak fast, I'll tell you that.
Well, you know what? If you're not the top driver in your club, you probably don't have that excitement. You're just used to winning. But when you're going and when you're chasing that guy down and you're looking and you're like, oh my God, the numbers are matching up. I'm doing this. I can do it. And then victory is snatched right from the jaws of defeat. And I'm like, damn it. So close. But like tenths of a second he beat me by. But it was kind of funny because I never really pay attention to the lady on the computer. But since I set this up as a new race, I had all the inputs correct. So she was right. And she broke my heart. She has an English accent. I'm going to change her to a man's voice. That's not so harsh.
You can just blow it off.
Yeah. Maybe I can get Wayne to do some recording for me and just have Wayne do all the inputs.
Yeah, but the race will never end then.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't think you have that much disk space.
No.
There's a race control program.
All right.
I always thought there was an Australian voice.
There's like 4 or 5 different voices you can pick from.
Yeah.
So.
They have like Porky Pig or Goofy or
No, but weird thing is you can customize it and do any voice you want. Like you can go into the computer audio program and tell it these are the words you want, and it'll do
Porky Pig would be hilarious. You'd be on your second lap by the time he said anything.
Elmer Fudd.
All right. Any other racing to talk about? All right. Floor is open. Any subject, so long as it's slot cars.
We were talking about setting up pods earlier and taping them up and things. Does anybody actually run the front screws on, a slot snug? Not fully tight, but just snug, and leave the back ones loose?
I've done that from time to time when I think I want to do something like suspension, but suspension is not allowed.
Yeah.
I learned that trick from Alan a couple of years ago. He was racing in a class that had that kind of rule, and by tightening the front ones and leaving the back ones loose, then the pod itself becomes its own suspension mechanism.
There picked up on that.
That works.
Alan Wilkerson.
Yeah.
Basically, you use the base plate as the spring, aren't you? There.
I think if I remember correctly, the video that the guy who owns NSR had said that he runs the screws at the front of his NSR cars fairly tight.
Yeah.
Very, very little, if any, play.
Yeah,
generally depends on if you're running on a bumpy plastic track. Generally, it's better to run the pod with a little bit of overall movement everywhere. The faster a track with more grippier tires, stronger motors, wider radius corners, so you're putting more load on the chassis as you go through the corner, you tend to stiffen the chassis up and continue to the point where on a couple of commercial tracks, I just glue the pods right in because you're generating so much speed through, 8-foot, 9-foot radius corners that it just twists the chassis so much that you need them to be stiff. So you really have to experiment, but the faster you go, the more torsional resistance you need in the chassis.
I think Spinning Pinion a week or two ago talked about a situation where the front screws being tight was beneficial. I don't remember specifically what the specific
again,
it's based on track conditions.
If you're using skinny tires,
it depends, right? It depends.
Yeah. If you're using skinny tires and a slow motor with no grip, then the answer is no. Everything changes. So, but back to Lenny's question, I always, on any pod that I can get away with, if the rules allow, I always run silicone washers between the chassis plate and the bottom of the pod lugs. That again, rules allowing if I put a silicone washer between the bottom of the rear pod lug and the top of the chassis plate, it's going to raise the pod in the motor, or raise the pod in the chassis. So if the rules allow, I will shave 20 thou off of the bottom of the pod lug and then put the silicone washers in and go from there.
Okay. Well, I've been running that sort of setup for quite a few years, and if the track's a bit sticky, I just tighten the screws up in the back.
Right.
It's a bit loose. I'll soften them off.
The answer is yes. Yes, with a dot to depending on a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Because I see a lot of blokes where I race, they run loose pods and then they finish up taping them up again. And I think, what's the point of that?
Right. Well, it's becoming more and more guys are figuring. I mean, all of the free movement is like uncontrolled movement is is not a good thing. It's uncontrolled movement. You don't know where it's going, right? So it's like you see a car driving down the road with no shocks and the wheels bouncing all over the place. If you can't control the placement of the wheels, you have no consistent handling. So loosening the pod is one thing, and then the guys put the tape on, which now controls the pod movement under tension, and they're going, oh, this is a great way to do it. So I do the same thing with silicone washers, which allow torsional flex, but no flop in the chassis.
Yeah. And when I used to race SCX cars, we get rid of all that, like the tongs, the tangs that used to go down on the chassis. We cut all them off.
Right.
Just use wire, just normal lead wire. But then I would put some gaffer tape underneath the chassis just to stop restrict the rock in the chassis.
Yeah.
Well, those lugs actually did that to an extent, didn't they? Because they're like light springs, and by cutting them off, you let that pod flop left and right without any control. Whereas the lugs were actually doing a little bit, and that's why taping supplementary even to the lugs in the right circumstances was better than just leaving them on the lugs.
Right.
My regulations didn't allow for lead wire, so I had to use them.
Yeah.
But, how tight they were, how much bend you put in them to make them firmer or softer,
right,
was a tuning trick because we weren't allowed to take the pods either. But things changed, and now the class is gone. But
do you have some of those silicone washers, Lenny?
No.
Okay. If you can get some, they're much better than tape for a bunch of reasons. Tape will, especially for a multi-race proxy or something, tape will fatigue over time. So what your car starts out with is not what it ends up with even halfway through the race, where the silicone washers are much more consistent. The silicone washers won't catch an edge or peel off on the bottom of the chassis, and
well, I don't use any tape on the, like, say, slotted or NSR. I'll just leave the front screw snug.
Yeah,
let it flex or pivot on that. But no, this was back in the old SCX days. I just used to change the gaffer tape regularly. That's all. Every couple of weeks, put a new strip of gaffer tape in. 2 minutes work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, thanks for that one.
Suspension cars and wood track cars, they're just a different animal. I don't have much experience with wood, and I wish I did. I just don't get the opportunity now. But what I've created here is intended to be suspension. You would get a thread started in those holes in my motor pod, but they're actually intended to, the holes are purposefully small so that they fit around the shank of an M2 screw and don't fit the thread. You have to actually screw the screw through them. It doesn't cut a thread in there. It's just right. It's just the sizes are just right to fit the shank of a suspension screw. And even then, there's no agreement on the diameter of the shank on a suspension screw. So you can choose between manufacturers to change the way the motor pod either does or doesn't shuffle around in the chassis. Personally, I quite like scale auto.
That's where if you have a front and a back screw, as in a diamond-shaped pod,
Yeah.
the pod does not shift side to side or back and forward, which is good. All it does is rotate torsionally.
Pivot through the center line.
Right.
Yeah, this business with pod motion, sliding around. It's yeah, I've seen the spinning pinion episode. I know that they were doing some nice things with I think it was O-rings, I think they mentioned, around the heads of the screws and in the vicinity of the recess in the underside of the chassis.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's interesting to know about. Personally, I'd just like the screws to be static and vertical and as stiff as possible.
Well, it's
I don't
it's
like-
interesting when you run, if you like the screws to be perfectly vertical, right? This is a geometry thing here. You're talking about pod rotation and pod float, okay? Pod tilt, pod rotation, whatever you want to call it. If you have the screws perfectly vertical, as the pod tilts, the screw hits either the inside or the
Yes.
outside of that hole and
Yeah.
restricts its movement and restricts the path of its movement.
Yeah. The hole
So-
becomes angled compared to the screw, and that's why a wibbly wobbly screw can follow the hole.
Right. So again, if you have a fairly snug single front screw and a fairly snug single rear screw,
Yeah.
which lets the pod rotate, then you can open up your wing holes a little bit more and
Yeah.
have a bit of a flop in the vertical screws to allow them to tilt in conjunction with the changing angle of the pod arms as the pod rotates.
Yes. The thing about the single, if you have a relatively snug rear screw, you can't get the vertical travel that you require for a suspension car.
Well, again, most of my stuff is on wood, and you don't want that on wood,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You need it on the bumpy plastic tracks, but you don't want that on wood.
And I actually choose different screws for different places. I said I like Scale Auto. I've actually designed this chassis to fit the Scale Auto screws.
Right.
But the two I put in the side mounts are not Scale Auto, purposefully because the ones I put there are a different shank diameter and they do wibble so that as the pod rotates, they will follow the angle that the hole would
Actually,
would
your
like.
pod does not rotate, it tilts.
Yeah, okay, let's call it that then. As it does that, the screw can move just to so that it doesn't bind.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about, and I've been building and I've been experiencing it and changing the holes are purposefully slightly small. I've got drill bits at every 1/10 of a millimeter, and I do use those. And I find myself assembling the thing and then taking it apart again and running a drill bit through that's the next size up and just generally playing around.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of attention to be paid to get a thing like this to function like a little sewing machine. And that's the optimum. That's what the aim is to get it to function perfectly, isn't it? But there's quite a lot of attention in every slot car for different reasons. But yeah, the way that this whole functions is it's kind of suboptimal, the old suspension screws thing. There should be some damping in there as well, but there isn't any. And if I could think of a better way, I would probably try to design it. But at the moment, we're sticking with what we know.
Well,
What's
yeah,
proven.
I mean, a rudimentary damping would be to use silicone washers below and above the pod lines.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Have you ever put them in place of springs, above the pod?
I don't use yes, I've been using silicone or urethane washers for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, I guess. And you should put them above and below.
And you'll do that even for a wood track car?
Yes.
Okay.
What I'll do for a wood track car is I'm not in a wood track car generally for the cars that I race and the tires and the motors and stuff. I'm generally not concerned. I'm trying to snug the chassis up. So what I'll do is instead of using multiple silicone washers, I'll use one and then to increase the roll stiffness of the car, and I'll just snug the screws up against it.
Yeah.
And then if I need more slop, I'll back the screws off and stack 2 or 3 silicone washers above and below.
Yeah, yeah. I've managed to get my hands on, and I can't remember where from, some 1mm cross section O-rings, and because that's a round profile, one presumes that it's going to crush slightly easier than a washer does.
What are they made of?
Silicone, red silicone, like the washers.
Right.
I'm not sure if anyone knows where they came from. Are they a slot car component? Because I'm pretty sure they were given to me by a friend.
Maybe. I haven't. No, I haven't seen them. No.
Yeah, they're great. They're an M2 O-ring,
Yeah.
1mm cross section, and they just, like I said, they squeak over the thread, and then once they find the shank, they'll fall down the shank with no friction.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing. If there was a little bit of friction between those and the screw shank, well, they would stay put, and they'll just stay put. But if they could get those to move up and down the shank of a screw, that might actually give you the opportunity to have a little bit of damping. Just like a friction damper.
Mm-hmm.
But can you has like find the bits? I've been all over AliExpress, as you know. I like to look around it. In fact, tell you what, I found on AliExpress recently, a spring perch. You know, in the Scale Auto spring sets, you get this washer with a step in it that sits inside. Part of it sits inside the coil spring. The rest is I call it a spring perch. Well, I found those, and they were listed as a Tamiya minis. No, Tamiya 4-wheel drive. What do they call those?
Mini Z?
No, not mini. The Kyosho is Mini Z.
Okay.
Tamiya 4-wheel drive is what they would.
They're called mini 4-wheel drive is what they're called. Mini 4-wheel drive.
Tamiya mini 4-wheel drive. That's the correct phrase. And I took a chance on them because the dimensions were not actually in the listing. So it was just to add them into an existing order packet. They were coming for free shipping. Just a few pounds if they were fail and they didn't fit, but they actually do. They've got an M2 hole. They fit inside the Scale Auto 4mm diameter screws. Springs, I should say. They're a wonderful little addition to the armory of kit, let's call it, that in the box that you can go and get them. I just want to know where I got those silicone O-rings.
They're made for Tamiya 4-wheel drive, mini 4-wheel drive.
No, they're not. I didn't buy these. I didn't buy these. I'm pretty sure that they're a slot car part. I just wondered if anybody knew who.
Is this the one you're looking at? Is this the one you're talking about?
You're not. There you go. Okay.
No, that's a flat washer.
Yeah, he's talking about an O-ring.
Okay.
I've got those. Those are useful.
Those are copies of Ernie's, and they're too stiff in my opinion. But
okay.
Ollie copied Ernie on those.
Of course, they're not available in the UK, so I have to get a friend in the States to ship them for me, and he's listening right now.
You can get them from Pendle. Get them from Pendle.
Well, at the time when I got them, I don't think they were there. So if they're there now, that's eased matters, but I haven't needed to buy any more since I initially got some. So
Do I have to send my wife to England again?
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, it's cheapest to ship stuff from England to the States.
Oh man. Listen, there's even the scale, even there's a suspension screw that I want to buy right now, and I cannot find a stockist in the UK. And it's a Scale Auto part, and Pendle have got all of that, but they don't list this screw or any of the screws on their own.
Wayne, what size? You're looking for a screw that goes around the 2mm screw?
I was looking for an We've got Garth suspension systems,
showing
haven't
off
we?
this different
Yeah,
variations there.
yeah.
I mean, this would be helpful if you turned on your microphone, talk to us.
I've got those phones. I can use those phones. I quite like those, but they don't survive sitting on a car for any length of time.
No memory.
That's it.
On the far right, are they're those look
They're
like
O-rings.
O-rings, yeah.
Yeah.
Those look like
Now, if they're not red, they're not likely to be silicone. They're likely to be butyl nitro and whatever.
That's an RC shock spring, but it's a real little bitty one for 18 scale cars.
Okay.
Hey, Wayne, I've got a lot.
It would be silicone, but I don't know.
AliExpress is where to find those red silicone. If you're looking for silicone O-rings, they have them all different sizes.
Okay. Oh, I need to go again then. I found a ball bearing race. You know the 332 ball race that we often use that's got a flange on it? Anyone? I found them without a flange. And yeah, I found them without a flange. I ordered them. I ordered 10. They are half of the weight of the one with the flange on. Now, it's not a lot of weight. I wouldn't swap one for the other because of that, but they are half the weight. But the main benefit that I find from them is that they are 1.6 millimeters wide because the flange isn't there, instead of being 332 wide. And note the jump from metric to imperial measurements there. So instead of being 1.6 without a flange, they're 1.6, and with a flange, they're 2.38. And that was the big benefit for me because I had a width limitation with regard to where my gears, wheels, etc. all wanted to be.
And those let you fit on bigger.
Those let me fit everything on, and they're also, now this is not a benefit, but they are unshielded. Now, if you want to oil, makes them far more accessible. It also makes them more accessible to dirt. So you would have to maintain them more often.
Yeah.
But they're very, very free. When I got them out of the packet, I haven't had to wash them through to wash out grease or anything like that. I've just popped them in the car and the axle spins really nice.
And where did you get those?
AliExpress.
Oh, Jesus.
He gets everything from here. It's his favorite place.
How much were they?
1 cent a
Weren't
piece.
expensive. Listen, I know about bearing grades, and I see them, and they are available in most grades on AliExpress. The search, if you really want to find the good bearings, is dental bearings. You use that phrase, and you'll pay a lot of money for your ball races, but you'll get grade 7s, grade 8s. You'll get high RPM specifications, and quite honestly, for a slot car, they don't do that many RPM. The side loads that a slot car put into a ball bearing race, minimal. You really do not need high grade ball bearing races for slot cars. If you're going to use ball bearing races,
well, you're talking slot cars in your world is plastic electric cars, right?
Yes, I am, and that's and I
I
realize
would argue a lot of guys use ball bearings, and I use them, and they're all ABEX 7s and 8s.
Yeah,
and I'm running 250,000 RPM motors.
Well, in those circumstances, then that's the right thing to do. I completely agree. But what I do with what most of us are doing, we really don't need. We really don't need that.
True.
So it's not actually worth our while spending that level of investment. And quite honestly,
one of the things that, this is sort of an aside, but for the group, and I've been doing a fair bit of contacting people and being contacted. Someone will ask a question and you'll get an answer based on that person's
experience. Yeah.
So someone will say, I'm looking for there was a thing on Slot Forum, and a guy said, I'm looking at entering the GT3 proxy, which was a key for me. I know it's on a wood track. I know what the rules are. And bless their hearts, but a couple of plastic car track guys came back and said, this is the way to do it, which was perfectly true for plastic tracks, but he's not running on a plastic track. So for all of us, if we could be just a little more sort of understanding of slot cars is a big term. And it's not, so anybody listening into this forum or this chat should, I don't like giving out poor advice, and I know no one else on here likes giving out poor advice. So we should sort of say, absolutely, for this application, this is a good idea. For this application, it's not such a good idea. So
yeah, everything's caveat, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and you're perfectly right. I mean, most of the commercial track guys will use oil light bushings for any motor from 50 to 75,000 RPM. And that's perfectly fine as long as they're aligned well and you use a good axle and all the rest of the stuff. To use, bearings in a slotted car or something like that, knock yourself out, go ahead. I don't think you're going to find much difference. If the crappier bearings that you use if you took all the balls out and measured them with a micrometer, they're all different sizes. They're not, the quality control is not there. The races aren't good. There's probably more slop in a crappy ball bearing than there is in a $1.50 pair of sintered bronze oil light. So, and you're right, depending on the application, if you're in a proxy, I tell guys don't use ball bearings. Ball bearings don't hold oil. So the 10th, 9th, 8th, 7th race down, you've got to re-oil them, but you can't because you're not there because your car is off in New Mexico, where the hell your car is, right? So anyway, I just think we should.
The other thing about a proxy is, I mean, how long is it? I mean, how many laps do the cars actually do? What mileage do they really cover?
Well, it's a combination of a bunch of things. Again, it could be a 10 race series, one race a month over, and there's probably 9 to 12 minutes of running per event. But it's over it. It's like the oil in your car. Just because you're not running it, it doesn't mean it's if you got a car sitting on your shelf for 10 or 12 months, some of the oil is going to leak out of the thing. So
yeah. See, in the cars that I'm building, we can do a 90-minute qualifying session and probably cover more distance than a proxy does. And then we put the car into 24-hour without maintenance. And I would shudder to think what would have to happen to a bushing-based car. And this is only, I can't say a bushing-based car falls apart. I've never actually run a bushing-based car for extended periods. They've all been ball bearing races. So I can't speak to how it actually survives or not.
Oh, bushing. A sintered bronze bushing will run much longer than any ball bearing.
Well, what about the axle that you put through it, particularly if it's a titanium, for example?
Well, okay. Again, I would never use a titanium axle because titanium axles are not particularly smooth. They're not particularly round, and they're not, concentric from end to end. But they're a little bit lighter, I guess.
And non-magnetic.
Right. I run magnetic axles in a car that go around a king track in 1 second.
So this pull between the motor can and an axle, then it's a real thing, but it's irrelevant.
It's everything is real. It just depends on how you measure it. Like, is there a difference? Yes, there is a difference. Can you see or feel or hear the difference? That's a totally different question.
And on that note, I think that's a perfect time to end the live chat. So I'm clicking end stream. Of course, we'll keep talking about this kind of stuff for the next 2 or 3 hours. But until next week, everybody wave bye. And we'll see you next week. Bye 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 bye.
I have a quick question for Chris once we're offline.
Offline.